Commander Jessica Winters stood motionless before the crystalline observation deck of the U.S. Nighthawk, her weathered reflection ghosting across the transparent metal. Jupiter's great red spot churned beneath the ship, a constant tempest that had raged for centuries. How fitting, she thought, that humanity's last stand would play out above the solar system's most enduring storm. The Nighthawk's stealth systems hummed through the deck plates, a subtle vibration that had become as familiar as her own heartbeat. The ship's quantum lattice hull absorbed every scan the Orcs sent their way, making them invisible to the biological sensors of the alien armada. But invisibility wouldn't be enough. Not anymore. "Commander," Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez's voice broke through the silence. "Long-range sensors are picking up more biosignatures. 3 more Nexus-class vessels joining the blockade." Winters didn't turn from the window. The Orcs ships were beautiful, in their own terrible way. Massive organic vessels that pulse with bioluminescent patterns, their crystalline structures reflecting Jupiter's angry light. They moved with perfect synchronization, each ship connected to the others through their neural network, functioning like cells in a vast cosmic organism. "How many of our ships made it through the rally point?" Winters asked, though she already knew the answer. The words felt like ash in her mouth. "The Constellation managed to jump out with the civilian convoy," Rodriguez replied, her fingers dancing across the neural interface. "But the Hyperion and Starkiller," she didn't need to finish. The debris field telling that story stretched across 500,000 kilometers of space. Winters finally turned from the window, her boots making no sound on the deck's padded surface. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of their stations. They were the best of the best, the last crew of the last stealth carrier humanity had left. The ship's AI, designated Phantom, maintained a ghostly presence in the neural network, its calculations keeping them hidden in the shadow of the gas giant. "Show me the tactical display," Winters ordered, approaching the central holotank. The projection sparked to life, showing their precarious position. The Orcs blockade had grown to encompass nearly a quarter of Jupiter's orbit, their biological ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that seemed to defy natural space combat doctrine. "They're adapting to our deployment patterns," Lieutenant Commander James Chen noted from his tactical station. "Each formation is specifically designed to counter our previous breakthrough attempts." Winters studied the display, noting how the Orcs ships pulsed in perfect synchronization. Their hive mind tactical network allowed them to think and act as one, but it was their greatest strength, and perhaps their only weakness. The Nighthawk's quantum sensors had detected microscopic delays in their response times at the edge of their formation, delays that grew larger the further a ship was from its nexus. "Phantom," Winters addressed the ship's AI, analysis of their communication patterns over the last 6 hours. The AI's response materialized as patterns of light in the holotank. The Orcs neural network shows signs of increasing strain. They've extended their formation beyond optimal range to maintain the blockade. Success rate of information transfer between outer elements and Nexus ships has dropped by 0.03%. Most would consider such a small percentage meaningless, but Winters had learned long ago that in the game of stealth warfare, microscopic advantages often meant the difference between victory and extinction. "What about our stealth systems?" she asked, knowing they were pushing the experimental technology to its limits. "Quantum lattice integrity at 87%, Phantom replied. "The Jupiter radiation bands are providing adequate cover for our position, but prolonged exposure will eventually compromise our stealth field." Winters placed her hand on the holotank's edge, watching as tiny motes of light represented the thousands of smaller Orcs bioships swarming around their massive Nexus carriers. Humanity had fought them for 3 years, learning the hard way that conventional weapons barely scratched their regenerating hulls. The Orcs didn't build their ships. They grew them, evolved them, perfected them through accelerated biological engineering that put human technology to shame. Yet here stood the Nighthawk, invisible and deadly, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. They had one card left to play, one desperate gambit that might just save Earth from biological assimilation. Winters just needed to figure out what that gambit was before time ran out for them all. The quantum lab hummed with barely contained energy, its specialized equipment casting strange shadows across the reinforced walls. Commander Winters watched as Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez manipulated the holographic representation of the Orcs neural network, his fingers tracing patterns through the ghostly display. "There," Rodriguez said, expanding a particular section of the simulation. "Every time we get close to their outer patrol ships, we see this fluctuation in their network. It's microscopic, but it's there." The hologram zoomed in, showing tiny disruptions in the Orcs' communication patterns, like ripples in an otherwise perfect pond. Winters leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. "Phantom, cross-referenced this with our stealth field emissions during those encounters." The AI's response was immediate, new data streams flowing into the display. Analysis shows a direct correlation between our quantum field harmonics and the disruption in their neural network. The closer we get, the more their communication efficiency degrades. Lieutenant Commander Chen, who had joined them in the lab, stepped forward. "Could we weaponize this? Turn our stealth field into some kind of disruptor?" Rodriguez's expression shifted from excitement to concern. "Theoretically, yes, but the power requirements would be astronomical. We'd have to redirect everything into the quantum matrix, including life support and structural integrity." "How long would we have?" Winters asked, already calculating possibilities. Rodriguez ran his hands through his graying hair. "Maybe 10 minutes before the ship starts breaking apart. The quantum feedback would tear through our systems like a hurricane. We'd need someone to manually maintain the field stability. The automation can't handle the complex adjustments needed at that power level." The lab fell silent as the implications sank in. Phantom projected new calculations, showing the theoretical impact of their modified stealth field on the Orcs fleet. The simulated ships writhed in digital agony as their neural connections failed. "They've never experienced disconnection," Chen mused, watching the simulation. "Their entire society is built on perfect unity. What happens to a hive mind when it can't think as one?" Winters traced her fingers along the edge of the holotank, remembering the fall of Earth's outer colonies. The Orcs' biological weapons had turned entire planets into breeding grounds for their ships, their perfect evolution consuming everything in its path. But perfection had its price. "Phantom, show me the projected blast radius if we overload the quantum core at the moment of maximum field strength." The AI complied, and a new simulation appeared. The blast wave rippled outward, the quantum disruption cascading through the Orcs' neural network like a virus through a nervous system. Ship after ship fell dark, their biological systems unable to maintain cohesion without the constant guidance of their nexus. "This is a one-way mission," Rodriguez said quietly. "Whoever stays behind to maintain the field stability will give humanity a fighting chance." Winters finished. She straightened up, her decision already made. "Begin the modifications. I want every scrap of power we can redirect to the quantum matrix." "Commander," Chen started to protest, but Winters held up her hand. "I'm not ordering anyone to stay behind. This has to be voluntary." She looked each of them in the eye. "The Orcs think they've perfected evolution, that their unity makes them invincible. But they've forgotten something fundamental about life itself." "What's that?" Rodriguez asked. "Sometimes survival requires sacrifice, the voluntary death of one so that others might live." Winters turned to the main display, where Jupiter's storms still raged beyond the lab's walls. "They'll never understand why someone would choose to die alone, cut off from their kind. That's their weakness. That's how we'll beat them." The Quantum Lab's equipment continued its eerie song as they began their work, transforming humanity's greatest defensive technology into a weapon of last resort. Outside, the Orcs fleet maintained their perfect formation, unaware that their greatest strength was about to become their undoing. "How long to complete the modifications?" Winters asked, already planning their approach vector. 6 hours, Rodriguez replied, his hands flying over the controls. Maybe 5 if we push it. But Commander. He hesitated. There has to be another way. Winters watched as Phantom ran another simulation, the holographic Arxen ships dancing their deadly ballet around Jupiter. Sometimes the only way forward is through the fire, she said softly. Let's make it count. The Nighthawk's mess hall sat empty except for Commander Winters and a half-empty cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The ship's chronometer showed 300 hours, but sleep remained elusive. Phantom had dimmed the lights to night cycle levels, casting long shadows across the metal tables. Display personal log. October 15, 2184. Winters commanded softly. A holographic window materialized before her, showing a younger version of herself standing in front of a suburban home. 2 children played in the background, their laughter echoing across 5 years of memory. You don't often watch these records, Phantom observed, its voice modulated to match the quiet atmosphere. Winters smiled faintly, because sometimes remembering hurts more than forgetting. She watched as her past self lifted her daughter Emma onto her shoulders, both of them grinning at the camera. This was 3 days before the Arxen hit New Washington. The scene shifted, showing the same street consumed by biological growths, the Arxen's terraforming weapons transforming human civilization into alien breeding grounds. Winters didn't look away. She'd watched this transition hundreds of times, using the pain to fuel her determination. Commander, Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom, interrupting her thoughts. You might want to see this. Minutes later, Winters stood in engineering, watching as Rodriguez and his team worked on the modified quantum matrix. The usually orderly space had been transformed into organized chaos, with equipment stripped from non-essential systems scattered across every surface. We found something in the original stealth field design, Rodriguez explained, pulling up technical schematics. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, your tactical officer's mother. She left notes in the system. She knew the field could be weaponized. Winters studied the equations, remembering Elizabeth Chen's brilliant mind. She died defending the quantum laboratory on Luna Base, buying time for her research to be evacuated. She never gave up, Winters murmured, even at the end. Like mother, like son, Rodriguez nodded toward where Lieutenant Commander Chen worked with the engineering team. He's been here all night, refining her calculations. The younger Chen looked up, his eyes carrying the same determined spark his mother's had. The field won't just disrupt their network, he explained, moving to join them. It'll create a cascade effect. Each disabled ship will amplify the disruption, passing it through their biological systems, like a virus. Winters watched the simulation play out again, understanding now why Elizabeth had buried this discovery so deep in the code. She knew the cost, Winters said softly, knew that using this would require a human mind to guide it. Chen finished. The calculations are too complex for I alone. It needs intuition, creativity. The very things the Arxen tried to engineer out of their evolution. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Humanity's messiest traits, their unpredictability, their emotional decisions, would be their salvation against the Arxen's perfect but rigid system. Show me the latest test results, Winters ordered, pushing aside personal memories to focus on the mission. The data streamed across multiple displays, showing power curves and field harmonics. The engineering team had cannibalized 3 backup generators and most of the secondary systems to fuel their modifications. The Nighthawk was being transformed from a stealth vessel into a quantum bomb. We've got one shot at this, Rodriguez warned. Once we initiate the field conversion, there's no going back. The power surge will fry most of our systems in the first 30 seconds. Winters nodded, her hand unconsciously touching the small pendant beneath her uniform, a gift from Emma on that last morning in New Washington. Sometimes a single shot is all you need. She turned to address the engineering team, seeing in their faces the same mix of fear and determination that she felt. What we're about to attempt goes against everything the Arxen believe. They think their unity makes them invulnerable. They've never understood that true strength comes not from perfect coordination, but from the willingness to stand alone when necessary. The ship's systems hummed around them, a constant reminder of the countdown to their final mission. Outside, Jupiter's radiation bands continue their ancient dance, oblivious to the human drama playing out in their midst. In less than 4 hours, they would turn the Nighthawk's greatest defense into a weapon of last resort, and Winters would ensure that Elizabeth Chen's final gift to humanity would not be wasted. The Nighthawk slipped through Jupiter's magnetosphere like a shark through dark waters. Commander Winters stood at the tactical station, watching as streams of radiation rolled off their modified shields in waves of ethereal light. Each burst of energy helped mask their approach, turning nature itself into an ally. Radiation levels at 150% of standard tolerance, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from her station. The enhanced quantum field is holding, but these readings are off the charts. Winters nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Arxen fleet floated above them, their biological ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that seemed to mock the chaos of Jupiter's storms. Phantom, status of their patrol routes. The AI's response appeared as a series of projected paths overlaid on the main view screen. Arxen vessels maintaining standard search patterns. Their biological sensors are experiencing increased interference from the radiation bands. Estimated detection range reduced by 38%. They never adapted to Jupiter's magnetosphere, Chen observed from his station. Their biotech is too sensitive, too perfect. They can't handle the natural chaos. The ship shuddered as they passed through another radiation wave. In the past, they would have avoided these turbulent regions, but now they sought them out. Each burst of radiation provided another layer of cover for their approach. Beginning power transfer to the modified quantum matrix, Rodriguez announced. Primary systems running at minimal capacity. We're as close to ghost mode as we're going to get. Winters felt the change immediately. The ship's familiar hum dropped to a whisper, leaving only the essential systems running. Life support cycled down to emergency levels, and the lighting dimmed to a soft blue glow. They were becoming a true phantom, barely more substantial than the space debris floating around them. "Show me the approach vector," Winters commanded. The tactical display shifted, highlighting their planned path through the Arxen formation. They would use Jupiter's largest radiation band as cover for their final approach, emerging directly beneath the nearest Nexus ship. "Commander," Chen's voice carried a note of concern. "I'm detecting unusual activity in the lower quadrant. 3 bioships have broken formation." The tactical display updated, showing the deviation. The Arxen vessels moved with their usual fluid grace, but their new pattern made no sense according to their standard protocols. They're searching for something, Winters realized. Phantom analysis. Behavioral patterns suggest they detected an anomaly in the radiation field. However, their sensors are unable to maintain lock due to interference. Probability of detection: 17% and rising. Winters made a quick decision. Alter course. Take us deeper into the radiation band. "Commander, the hull wasn't designed for that kind of stress," Rodriguez protested, "even with the modifications." "The hull will hold," Winters cut her off. "Because it has to." The Nighthawk dove deeper into Jupiter's magnetosphere, where competing magnetic fields created storms of charged particles. The ship's structure groaned under the strain, but the enhanced quantum field held, transforming each burst of radiation into another layer of concealment. Through it all, Winters watched the Arxen ships above them. Their perfect formation rippled with subtle adjustments as they tried to compensate for the interference. The alien vessels' bioluminescent patterns pulsed with increasing frequency, a sign of their growing agitation. "They know something's wrong," Chen said quietly. "They can feel it, even if they can't see us." "That's the problem with perfect systems," Winters replied, allowing herself a grim smile. They can sense when something disrupts their order, but they can't adapt fast enough to stop it. The Nighthawk continued its silent advance, riding the line between detection and destruction. Each passing moment brought them closer to their target, and Winters felt the weight of their mission pressing down like a physical force. 2 minutes to optimal position, Phantom announced. All systems operating within critical parameters. Winters looked around the bridge at her crew, each face focused, determined, ready to make their final stand count. They had trained for years to perfect their stealth techniques, but this would be different. This time, they weren't trying to slip past the enemy unseen. This time, they were bringing chaos to perfection itself. Quantum matrix at critical threshold, Rodriguez announced, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. The engineering station's displays flickered with warning signals as power levels pushed far beyond their designed limits. Commander Winters stood at the center of the Nighthawk's bridge, watching as impossible colors danced across the quantum field projections. They had reached their attack position beneath the Orcs fleet, hidden in the shadow of Jupiter's most violent radiation storm. "Begin evacuation sequence," Winters ordered, her tone leaving no room for argument. "All non-essential personnel to emergency pods. Lieutenant Chen, coordinate the withdrawal." Chen's fingers flew across his console, but he didn't move from his station. "With respect, Commander, I'm staying." "That wasn't a request, Lieutenant Commander," Winters replied, though pride flickered in her eyes. "Someone needs to guide the rescue ships to the survival pods." The bridge crew exchanged glances, each knowing these were their final moments together. Through the view screen, Jupiter's massive form filled half the sky, its eternal storms a reminder of nature's raw power. Multiple contacts. Rodriguez's warning cut through the moment. 3 bioships breaking formation, heading toward our position. The tactical display showed the Orcs vessels moving with their characteristic fluid grace, their biological sensors finally detecting something amiss in the radiation patterns. Their crystalline structures pulsed with increasing intensity, broadcasting alarm signals through their neural network. Phantom, status of the quantum disruption field. Winters demanded, watching as more enemy ships began to alter their perfect formations. Field integrity at 93%. The AI responded. Power fluctuations within acceptable parameters. However, maintaining manual control will become increasingly difficult as systems begin to fail. The ship shuddered as the first wave of their modified quantum field reached out toward the nearest Orcs vessel. The alien ship's bioluminescent patterns stuttered, its perfect synchronization with the hive mind temporarily disrupted. "They're responding," Chen reported, his hands dancing across the tactical controls. Multiple ships launching biological countermeasures, some kind of adaptive defense mechanism. Through the view screen, they watched as the Orcs ships released clouds of crystalline spores, each one designed to detect and neutralize threats to their neural network. The space around the Nighthawk filled with living sensors, searching for the source of the disruption. "Quantum field is drawing too much power," Rodriguez warned. "Hull integrity dropping. We have minutes, not hours." Winters nodded, having expected this. "Begin final phase. All remaining personnel, clear the bridge." She turned to face her crew, memorizing each of their faces. "It's been an honor." The bridge crew hesitated for just a moment before following their orders. Rodriguez squeezed Winters' shoulder as she passed, while Chen offered a sharp salute. Within moments, Winters stood alone on the bridge, accompanied only by Phantom's ethereal presence. "Initiating Command Override Alpha," Winters announced, sliding into the pilot's seat. "Transfer all systems to manual control." The neural interface activated, connecting Winters directly to the ship's systems. Information flooded her consciousness. Power levels, field harmonics, structural integrity warnings. The Nighthawk had become an extension of her will, every system responding to her thoughts. Through this enhanced awareness, she felt the quantum disruption field building to impossible levels. The ship's structure groaned under the strain, but she held it together through sheer determination. Multiple hull breaches detected, Phantom reported. Automatic repair systems failing. Quantum field intensity approaching theoretical maximum. Above them, the Orcs fleet had finally realized the true nature of the threat. Their perfect formations dissolved into chaos as ships tried to distance themselves from the growing disruption. But it was too late. The quantum cascade had begun. Winters watched through the ship's sensors as the nearest Orcs vessel's neural network began to collapse. The biological ship writhed in space, its crystalline structure pulsing with erratic patterns as it lost connection to the hive mind. They never understood, Winters whispered, both to herself and to the dying ship above. Perfect unity makes you strong, but it also makes you vulnerable. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in standing alone. The Nighthawk systems continued to fail around her, but Winters held her position. Through the neural interface, she could feel every tremor, every power surge, every moment of her ship's final battle. They would not go quietly into the dark. They would light up the Jupiter system with one last display of human defiance. The Nighthawk carved through space like a blade through silk, its quantum field leaving trails of disrupted reality in its wake. Commander Winters' hands danced across the neural interface controls, each movement precise despite the chaos erupting around her. Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, Phantom reported, its voice steady against the background of screaming alarms. Quantum field intensity exceeding design parameters by 300%. Winters barely heard the warnings. Through the neural link, she felt every wound in her ship's dying body, every surge of power through its overtaxed systems. Above them, the first wave of Orcs ships writhed in electromagnetic agony as their neural networks collapsed. "Show me their weak points," she commanded, her voice hoarse from the metallic taste of recycled air. The tactical display highlighted gaps in the Orcs formation, microscopic imperfections in their otherwise perfect geometric patterns. The massive Nexus ship loomed ahead, its crystalline structure pulsing with frantic patterns as it tried to maintain control over its rapidly disintegrating network. Biological countermeasures filled space around them, living weapons that tried to adapt to the quantum disruption. They're attempting to reconfigure their neural pathways, Phantom observed. Probability of successful adaptation, 28% and rising. Not fast enough, Winters growled, pushing the Nighthawk into a spiral that should have been impossible for a ship its size. They threaded through a gap between two bioships, their quantum wake sending cascading failures through both vessels' neural systems. The view through the bridge windows had become surreal. Reality itself seemed to bend around their modified quantum field, creating patterns that human eyes were never meant to see. Each pulse of their disruption field sent waves of impossible colors rippling through the Orcs fleet. Primary power core reaching critical levels, Phantom warned. Structural integrity field failing. We have 3 minutes until complete system collapse. Winters ignored the warning, focusing instead on the tactical display. The Orcs ships were breaking formation, their perfect coordination shattered by the quantum disruption. Some vessels fired blindly into space, their biological weapons useless against an enemy they couldn't properly detect. They're running on instinct now, Winters realized, watching the chaos spread. Cut off from the hive mind, they're reverting to basic survival protocols. A massive surge of energy from the Nexus ship caught the Nighthawk's port side, sending cascading failures through already damaged systems. Winters felt the hit through the neural interface like a physical blow, but she held course. Warning, Phantom's voice took on an urgent tone. Multiple high-energy signatures detected. The Nexus ship is attempting to purge its neural network, a complete reset. Through the quantum interference, Winters watched as the enormous Nexus vessel began to pulse with building energy. Its crystalline surface fragmented and reformed, trying to shed the disruption like a snake shedding its skin. "They're desperate," she said, a grim smile crossing her face. "They'd rather lobotomize themselves than face disconnection." Phantom, all power to the quantum field. Let's show them what real desperation looks like. The Nighthawk's engines screamed as Winters pushed them beyond their limits, diving straight toward the Nexus ship's command node. The quantum wake behind them had become a storm of fractured spacetime, destroying the neural connections of every Orcsan ship it touched. 30 seconds to complete systems failure, Phantom announced. The ship cannot sustain this level of quantum distortion. Winters felt blood trickling from her nose, the neural interface burning through her synapses as she maintained the impossible field harmonics. Through the pain, she watched as the mighty Orcsan fleet, the terror of human space, began to tear itself apart. "Send the signal," she ordered, her voice barely a whisper. "Tell the fleet what we found. Show them their gods can bleed." The Nighthawk plunged deeper into the heart of the enemy formation, its quantum field carving a path of chaos through their perfect order. In its wake, the greatest spacefaring empire humanity had ever encountered learned a lesson written in fire and fractured reality. Sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one with nothing left to lose. Reality shattered around the Nighthawk as its quantum field reached critical mass. Commander Winters, blood now flowing freely from her ears and nose, guided the dying ship through the chaos with inhuman precision. The neural interface had burned away all sensation except the raw feed of data and the ship's dying screams. "Quantum cascade reaching terminal velocity," Phantom reported, its voice distorting as ship systems failed one by one. Neural network disruption, spreading beyond predicted parameters. Through the fractured view screen, Winters watched as the massive Nexus ship writhed above them. Its crystalline structure, once a testament to biological perfection, now cracked and splintered under the quantum assault. Tendrils of impossible energy crawled across its surface, spreading like digital cancer through its neural pathways. "Show me the chain reaction," she managed through gritted teeth. The tactical display flickered to life one final time, showing the spread of the disruption through the Orcsan fleet. Each affected ship became a new epicenter, broadcasting the quantum chaos through their own neural networks. "The pattern is exponential," Phantom analyzed. "They cannot sever their connections fast enough to contain the spread. Their perfect unity has become their perfect vulnerability." Winters pushed the Nighthawk into a spiral around the Nexus ship's primary neural cluster, their quantum wake tearing through layers of living crystal. The alien vessel's bioluminescent patterns turned erratic, flashing in sequences that revealed pure animalistic panic. "Multiple hull breaches detected," Phantom warned. "Structural integrity at 7%. Port engine core has gone critical." The ship bucked beneath her as another section of hull peeled away, exposing more decks to vacuum. Through the neural interface, Winters felt each loss like the amputation of a limb, but she held their course. Around them, space itself seemed to convulse as the quantum cascade reached critical mass. Smaller Orcsan ships began to dissolve, their biological technology breaking down at the molecular level as the disruption severed their connection to the hive mind. The perfectly coordinated fleet devolved into chaos, ancient survival instincts overwhelming their engineered perfection. "They're trying to adapt," Winters observed, watching through failing sensors as some ships attempted to form smaller networks, desperate to maintain some semblance of unity. But they can't change fast enough. They'd forgotten how to be individual. The Nexus ship made one final attempt to restore order, broadcasting commands through its fragmenting neural network. Instead, it only accelerated the cascade, spreading the quantum disruption to every vessel still connected to its dying mind. 15 seconds to complete systems failure, Phantom announced. "The quantum field has become self-sustaining. It will continue to propagate even after our destruction." Winters smiled through the blood and pain. "Send the final transmission to the fleet. Let them know." She coughed, tasting copper. "Let them know the path is clear." The Nighthawk's communication array sputtered to life one last time, broadcasting their sensor data to the waiting human forces. Through the quantum chaos, Winters glimpsed the tactical display showing friendly ships moving into position, ready to exploit the gap they'd torn in the Orcsan's perfect defense. "It was an honor, Commander," Phantom said, its voice growing fainter as systems failed. In all my analysis, I never fully understood human sacrifice until now. That's why we'll win, Winters whispered, watching as the mighty Nexus ship began to break apart above them. Perfect evolution created perfect machines, but humanity. She pushed the failing ship into one final climb, aiming for the Nexus ship's neural core. Humanity created something far more powerful. What did we create? Phantom asked, its voice barely audible above the ship's death throes. Choice, Winters answered, as the quantum cascade reached its peak. We created the power to choose our own path, even if that path leads to our end. The Nighthawk's broken hull blazed with impossible light as the quantum field collapsed in on itself. In its final moments, the ship became a star of human making, its light spreading through the Orcs fleet like divine fire, teaching beings of perfect unity the terrible price of individual sacrifice. Lieutenant Commander Chen watched from the bridge of the U.S. Constellation as the quantum cascade reached its climax. The space around Jupiter's orbit had become a canvas of impossible colors as reality itself buckled under the strain of the Nighthawk's final attack. Multiple signatures breaking formation, his tactical officer reported, voice tight with tension. The Orcs fleet is. They're tearing themselves apart. Through the main view screen, they watched as the massive Nexus ship's crystalline structure fractured, sending waves of disruption through the remaining neural networks. The perfectly coordinated Orcs armada had devolved into chaos, their ships firing blindly or attempting to flee. The Nighthawk's signal is still broadcasting, communications announced. Audio only. Chen nodded, and Commander Winters' final message filled the bridge, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding her. Remember us not for how we fell, but for why we stood. The path is clear. Strike now, while their unity is broken. Show them what humanity can do. All ships, battle formations, Chen ordered, his mother's quantum theories finally vindicated in spectacular fashion. The commander gave us our opening. Let's make it count. The human fleet emerged from their hiding positions in the outer system, ships appearing from behind moons and asteroid clusters. They struck with coordinated fury, but unlike the Orcs' perfect geometry, each human vessel moved with individual purpose and determination. The remnants of the Orcs fleet, cut off from their neural network, could only react with primitive survival instincts. Their biological weapons, once precisely controlled, now fired wildly into space. Some ships attempted to establish smaller networks, but the quantum disruption had corrupted their very ability to connect. Look at them, Chen's tactical officer breathed. They don't know how to fight alone. The Orcs' mighty warships, each one a marvel of biological engineering, began to die. Without the guidance of their hive mind, the living vessels started to break down at the cellular level. Their crystalline structures, once shimmering with coordinated bioluminescence, now pulsed with erratic patterns of decay. Where the Nighthawk had struck its final blow, a new phenomenon emerged. The quantum cascade had torn a hole not just in the Orcs formation, but in their very understanding of existence. Ships that had never known individual thought were forced to make decisions alone, and they couldn't cope with the freedom. Signal from the Nighthawk's emergency pods. Communications cut in. They're reporting success. The crew made it out. Chen allowed himself a small smile, even as he watched the spot where Commander Winters and his mother's theories had changed the course of the war. The Nighthawk itself was gone, consumed by its own quantum fire, but its legacy would echo through human history. All ships, press the advantage, he commanded. The Orcs built their empire on perfect unity. Let's show them the power of human chaos. The battle that followed would be studied for generations. Human ships, each acting with individual initiative while maintaining loose coordination, systematically dismantled what remained of the mighty Orcs fleet. Every captain made their own decisions, adapted to local conditions, showed the kind of creativity that no hive mind could match. Hours later, As the last Arxan ship fell silent, Chen stood at the observation deck of the constellation. Jupiter's eternal storms raged below, unchanged by the momentous battle that had just taken place in their shadow. Among the debris fields, recovery ships were already at work, collecting data and survivors. "Send word to Earth," he ordered quietly. "Tell them Commander Winters and the Nighthawk found the key. The Arxan aren't invincible. They're just perfect. And perfect things can't adapt." A memorial would be built later, not just to honor the Nighthawk's sacrifice, but to commemorate the moment humanity proved its worth among the stars. Not through superior technology or numbers, but through the very traits the Arxan had engineered out of their existence: individuality, creativity, and the courage to stand alone. As the human fleet secured their victory, the quantum disruption continued to spread through nearby space, a lasting reminder that sometimes the mightiest fall not to superior strength, but to those willing to sacrifice everything to prove that imperfection could triumph over perfection.